This is Into the Radius, and it is by far the most requested VR game for me to check out on this channel. I have to be honest, I've been pretty intimidated by it. Outside of a select few games, the survival shooter genre just isn't the type of thing I usually go for. And on top of that, virtually everything I had heard was that it is a stressful, confusing, and sometimes broken experience. Well, thanks to all the comments, I finally decided to give it a try, and now 20 hours later, I can absolutely confirm all of those things. This is a frustrating, anxiety-inducing, and messy game. Yet, despite all of its flaws, this is one of the most unique shooters made for VR. It's deeply immersive, and I can't stop playing it. I'm obsessed. I don't know that I can say that this game is for everyone, but I think whether you're a fan of this type of game or not, it's definitely worth checking out. In case you stumbled on this video and it's your first time hearing about it, let's just talk about what Into the Radius actually is. A lot of people have likened this game to the VR equivalent of Stalker. In a lot of ways, I think that's pretty fair, but in others, I think it kind of undersells the experience. Just like Stalker, you're tasked with entering the zone, or in this case, the Radius, a post-apocalyptic world where you'll investigate anomalies, scavenge for supplies, and fight to survive against some very challenging enemies. The core gameplay loop has you taking on missions, outfitting yourself to survive the Radius, and then using any profits from your time in the Radius to upgrade your equipment so you can take on even more challenging missions. While there is technically a story here, I still don't really have any idea what's going on after 20 hours, but I think the core gameplay loop is compelling enough that it kind of doesn't matter. Where I think Into the Radius really separates itself from a game like Stalker is in all of the finer details. The best way I can describe it is that this feels like a very manual experience. In most other survival games, if you're hungry, you would find a piece of food and click use. But here, you would find a can, open the can, take your knife, and use it to eat the food one piece at a time. Or you could smoke a cigarette in real time that you have to take individually out of the pack and light yourself, because for some reason that also helps you regain stamina. What about if your gun started jamming up on your last venture into the Radius? Here, you'll need to spray the gun with WD-40, use a toothbrush to scrape away the rust, and then take a rod, wrap a piece of paper towel around it, and use that to clean out the barrel. This might all sound really tedious, and it definitely can be, but here it feels purposeful and strategic. How you set yourself up and prepare before entering the zone is often the deciding factor between survival or not. When you have to manually reload individual rounds into magazines and then decide how many of those magazines you're actually going to take on a run with you, it really makes you rethink how you're approaching situations. And because reloading your weapon or healing is such a labored process, it makes your time in the Radius very tense and very stressful. And that's really the key word for how I would describe this experience: stressful. That might immediately turn people off, but I think the rewarding feeling that you get for a successful run in the zone makes it all worth it. I had tried to play this game a couple of times, and I never really made it very far. I was always confused about the mechanics and then would die immediately as soon as I entered the Radius. I decided that I needed to force myself to figure this game out, and thanks to the help of a couple wonderful viewers, I was able to get through the first mission. It still took me a couple hours after that to get my bearings, but once it clicked, it clicked. I started running through a to-do list every time I was about to head into the Radius. I played a lot more carefully once I got into the Radius. I started organizing my safe house so I knew what resources I had and what I should be scavenging. I found a groove for how I was interacting with this world. And now, when I have a really successful venture into the Radius, I will never forget how rewarding it felt. All of the stress and anger leading to this overwhelming feeling of accomplishment. Sometimes you'll get back to the safe house and feel like you just barely made it out alive. While the visuals and audio here aren't the most impressive thing you've ever experienced, even by VR standards, they help add to this really tense atmosphere. The sound design specifically, and some of the weird voice lines that you'll hear from the enemies, is really creepy, especially when you're sneaking around in the dark with only a flashlight and you cannot tell where they're coming from. This game definitely has problems. I had a bad habit of just dropping things and not even realizing it. The game says that there's stealth, but I don't even know if that's true. I feel like I was having shots fired at me from across the map, and while I never encountered anything game-breaking, I definitely encountered my fair share of bugs. But I think the good far outweighs the bad, and what I've taken away from it that has made this one of my favorite VR games now is that I think that the way this game is built could only really work in VR. I know that there are plenty of tactical and survival shooter games out there that do a lot of similar things. I really do love the Stalker series, but nothing has ever made me feel this a part of the world, to the point where I'm stressing over the organization of my shelving. Most of the comments that I mentioned at the top of the video said that Into the Radius was one of, if not the most immersive experience that a lot of players have found in VR. It might not be a technical marvel, but they've created a really tactile experience using the medium of VR that really immerses you regardless of the technical side. It genuinely feels like this style of game was tailor-made for VR. If you push past those first couple hours of confusion, you'll find one of the most special VR games available today. But now, as always, I want to hear from you guys. Have you played Into the Radius? If so, what was your experience like? And if you haven't played it, is it something you want to play, or is it just not for you? I just picked up Into the Radius 2 and I really want to check it out. I think it's still way too early in development to actually give any thoughts about it, but I might end up doing a couple streams of it, so let me know if that's something you would want to watch. If you made it this far in the video and you enjoyed the content, I really do appreciate anytime somebody hits that like button. It goes a long way towards supporting this channel, and if you didn't like the content, I want to know that too. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.